What are Lyft drivers actually making in 2026? I've driven in markets where Lyft can actually pay, and I've driven in markets where turning it on is a waste of time. So let's talk about what the numbers really look like for 2026. Welcome back to the Gridwise channel, and today we're breaking down how much Lyft drivers really make in 2026. We're going to look at what the average Lyft driver earns per active hour, how Lyft's base pay, percentage-based bonus zones, and ride challenges stack together, and why those earnings can look completely different from one city to the next. Some markets see solid Lyft money. Others, like where I'm driving in Jacksonville, they barely move the needle. So let's dig into how the pay works and what that actually means for your earnings. Now, before we talk about specific dollar amounts, you need to know how Lyft pays its drivers. Lyft's pay is built on a simple foundation: a base rate to start the ride, a per mile rate, and a per minute rate while the passenger is in the car. The rider sees one total price. Lyft, they take their service fee off the top, and what's left is what you see as your driver earnings. That is the core of everything. On top of that, Lyft has two main extras in 2026: bonus zones and ride challenges. Now here's how the bonus zones work. You'll see colored areas on the map with a percentage. If it says 10%, that means you're getting 10% extra on the Lyft portion of that ride. But 10% of a $15 ride is only $1.50. If the percentage isn't high, that bonus isn't moving the needle much. So when you see those zones, don't just think, oh, it's pink, it must be great. You have to do that quick math, and you have to ask, what does this percentage actually pay in real dollars on typical rides? Then you have the challenges. Lyft might say something like, complete 30 rides between Friday and Monday and you earn X amount of dollars. Now they usually split that into two tiers. You hit that first chunk, around 2/3 of the rides, and you get a partial payout. If you finish all the rides in the challenge, you unlock the bigger payout. Now that's nice because you don't have to finish the whole thing to actually get something, but it still means you're committing your time to Lyft. If your market is slow and you're grinding out those rides, that might pay less than just doing the normal thing on Uber. So that's the structure. You have base rates, bonus zones that are percentage based, and ride challenges with partial and full payouts. Now let's talk about what that adds up to in actual earnings. All right, let's talk real numbers. On average, when you look at the data, Lyft drivers are in the low 20s per hour while they're on trips. So figure something like a little over $20 an active hour before expenses. That's the part most people screenshot and they post online. You'll see sometimes examples like 15 active hours in a week with a little over $300. That's just a nationwide baseline. It mixes a ton of part-timers and some full-timers, so it doesn't mean drivers only work 15 hours. In reality, a lot of people are doing way more than that, 30, 40, 50 hours, especially in stronger Lyft markets, or if they lean more on Lyft than I do. The important thing isn't how many hours some average drivers work. The important thing is, what does your hourly look like on Lyft, in your city, and with the amount of driving that you do. And remember, all those numbers I just mentioned are gross. That's what you see in the app before gas, maintenance, tires, insurance, and taxes. Once you take that stuff out, most drivers drop down into the low teens and low 20s per hour in actual take home. If Lyft is slow in your market, like it is for me here in Jacksonville, you might not even get enough rides to hit those averages because of the dead times between trips kills your hourly. In a busy city, the good demand with some helpful challenges or bonus zones, you can beat those averages during the right hours. Same app, but totally different results. That's why I keep saying Lyft is market dependent. Now let's compare Lyft to Uber, because a lot of drivers are multi-apping and trying to figure out which one deserves more of their time. On a per ride basis, if you compare similar trips, Lyft and Uber often are widely different. The base rates per mile and per minute are usually in the same ballpark, but the big differences are how many passengers are actually using each app where you live and how the bonuses are structured. Now, in most markets that I've driven, More riders open Uber first, and that means there's more requests, you have less dead time, and higher weekly earnings because you completed more trips. Lyft, on the other hand, is often cheaper for the passenger. That can attract riders, but cheaper for them doesn't automatically mean better for you. Lower fares, shorter trips, and small percentage bonuses can add up to less money per hour on your end. And remember, Lyft's bonus zones are percentage based. If that zone is sitting at 10% or 15%, you're not seeing the kind of big fat dollar amount that you sometimes see on Uber when there's a surge. From my experiences, even with XL and Black, Lyft tends to pay less than Uber for similar trips in a lot of markets. Combine that with fewer pings, and that's exactly why I don't bother running Lyft in Jacksonville. Uber keeps me moving, Lyft has me waiting. In other markets, like parts of Atlanta, Lyft can actually hold its own because more people are using it. That's why you can't copy someone else's screenshots from a different city. Your passengers and your market decide how these apps perform. The big question, is Lyft worth it in 2026? The real answer is, it depends on your market and your strategy. Lyft can make sense when riders in your city actually use Lyft a lot, so you're getting consistent requests. Bonus zones are offering high enough percentages that they add real money on top of your normal fares. Ride challenges that are realistically achievable with the driving you're already planning to do, instead of forcing you to chase rides that don't pay. And you have access to XL, Comfort, or Black, and your city has a demand for those categories on Lyft. But Lyft usually doesn't make sense when you're waiting longer between Lyft rides than you are Uber rides. When that total payout on Lyft is lower than Uber for the same type of trip. When the bonus zones percentages look good on the map, but they only add tiny amounts in dollars. And when the challenges pull you away from better paying Uber time just so you can finish a bar on the screen. And keep in mind, both companies will show you busy zones on the map because they want drivers logged in and ready for their platform. That doesn't mean there are enough paying rides to hit your hourly goal. The map, that's marketing. The earnings, that's reality. Here's how to figure out if Lyft deserves a spot in your rotation where you drive. Run both apps at the same time for at least a couple of weeks. Turn on Uber, turn on Lyft, and let them compete. Don't be loyal to a logo. Take good trips from both and skip obvious trash from both. Pay attention to volume and wait time. How long are you sitting between rides on each app? If Lyft keeps you parked while Uber keeps you moving, well, that's a red flag. Your time is money. Step 3 is compare pay for similar rides. You gotta look at what you earn for a 20-minute, 10-mile trip on Uber versus Lyft. Do the same for XL, for Comfort, and for Black if you have those. If Lyft is consistently paying less for the same work, that matters more than any pay zone. Then step 4, be honest about the bonus zones and the challenges. When you see a bonus zone, ask yourself this: what percentage is this? On a typical ride here, how many actual dollars is that? If it's a 10% bonus on a short ride, you're talking about $1 or so. That's not changing your life. And with the challenges, ask yourself this: can I reach that first tier or the full challenge with the driving that I'm already doing? Or am I giving up better Uber money just to chase this bonus? Step 5 is to track your hourly by platform, not just by total. At the end of the week, you don't just want to know, I made $800. You want to know, how much did I make per hour on Uber after expenses? How much did I make per hour on Lyft after expenses? Once you have those numbers, the decision becomes pretty simple. Now, what are Lyft drivers actually making in 2026? On average, the gross numbers come in around the low 20s per active hour before expenses. But that doesn't tell you whether Lyft is worth your time. The real story is how those numbers change from market to market and how much dead time and car costs you're eating along the way. Lyft runs on base pay, percentage-based bonus zones, and ride challenges. It's often cheaper for the passenger, but cheaper rides and small percentage bonuses don't always equal better pay for the drivers. That's why the smartest move is to test Uber and Lyft side by side. Track your real hourlies on each app and then be loyal to your numbers, not just an app. If Lyft helps you hit your income goals in your city, keep it in your toolbox. If not, there's nothing wrong with letting Uber carry the load. Either way, let your data, not the colors on the map, decide.